From the Hanging with Web Show TV's Bargain Basement Studio in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, it's Pillow Talk with Willow Schuyler.
Will you take me to Winnipeg?
I will, someday. Toronto, Montreal, Quebec, Winnipeg.
Now what's this guy doing up here in Manitoba?
He was holding the map up.
Every salvage mission that's been through this system has disappeared. Even those old pirates out at Winnipeg Drift say it's cursed.
Cursed. Winnipeg's got a great ballet. Have a good time, I swear to God.
Sweet guinea pig of Winnipeg! They've taken over our company!
Balderdash! I never agreed to that!
I should have stayed in Winnipeg, you know? I had a nice gallery, 3 paintings in the wall.
Are you kidding? And you look back. Born home, Quebec. Drafted out of the juniors in the 5th round to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Played for a year with the Leafs, then traded to the Winnipeg Jets, then to Calgary, then to Boston.
Wow. So Winnipeg must get pretty cold up there.
That's it! Back to Winnipeg!
Hey everyone, welcome to Willow's Pillow Talk. I am Willow Schuyler. Thank you, Carl, for joining us in the chat. And with me today is, sorry, I don't want to butcher your name, Michael Gillespie?
Gillespie, sure. I answered anything.
All right. I hate butchering people's names, but thank you very much for joining me. You are the former manager of Sugar and Spice. Was there any other band from the 60s up and until recently were you a manager of?
The first band was a band called the Griffins, which I merged and created Sugar and Spice from that.
Okay.
I brought female voices in for the first time. Once we got that launched, I launched a second band called Love Circle with a female voice. At some point in there, and I don't remember the sequence, I managed a band called Safe and Sound, and some of the members of that band ended up in Love Circle. Following that, I did that actively through the early 70s, and then I was in business in broadcasting and recording, and I had really nothing to do with the business directly until approximately 2000 through 2004. I actually managed 2 bands that my son performed in, and one was called Nemo, and the other one was called Projector.
Oh, wow.
Since then, I've been involved with hundreds of bands over the years, but not directly as a manager other than the ones I've mentioned.
Yeah. So what is it that you look for as, like, is it a particular sound that you're looking for for when it comes to bands? Like,
you, but I'll hear me.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm sorry. My internet is cutting out. I apologize. Uh-oh.
Okay, it looks live now?
Yeah, now I think it kicked back in.
All right. In the early days, I wasn't looking for anything except the music that we enjoyed, and at the beginning, that tended to be pop and rhythm and blues. And we were looking for musicians who had some talent. Everybody, including me, wanted to be a rock star. You know, I thought I could play bass and be, you know, and get girls. Well, I discovered that I could get girls, but it wasn't by playing bass. And I discovered as a bass player, I made a much better manager.
Oh, okay.
So I dropped playing bass and became a manager. Here we are 55 years later, and with time on my hands and in the COVID environment, I've still got my bass amp from 1965, and I just bought myself a new Hofner bass like we used to use. And so I said maybe I should get somebody to teach me to play it properly. And so I've had offers from several famous people, including Spider from Streetheart and Dan Donahue, the producer, and Jamil from Projector, the old. But so I'm getting back into music. Even in the early days, I was good enough as a bass player. I could figure out what the notes were, but I didn't have the stamina to practice. I didn't have the diligence to work and play in time with other guys. So I figured that was a loss.
Yeah.
But I could figure out the bass lines, and I usually taught them to some of our bass players, and then they were able to perform it properly.
And speaking of like famous people that you've worked with, Randy Bachman actually wrote a song for Sugar and Spice. What was that like working with him?
It was good. It was he wasn't as famous as he is now. It was in the period when they had returned from England and were broke and had to work at the CBC to be able to pay their bills. And they played on Music Hop one afternoon a week for about a year. But I'd always been a fan of Randy. He was originally the guitar player in Chad Allen and the Reflections, which became Chad Allen and the Expressions, which put out in June of 67, I think it was 67, a song called Shaken All Over, and they put the words Guess Who, trying to market themselves as perhaps a Beatles-like sounding band or a European band. And that was a lesson that I observed with them, that somebody had the sense that the local crowd wasn't going to go out and just pick up another record because it was from one of the local bands. You know, there wasn't much incentive for them to do that. They could see them play live and so forth. So people didn't have a lot of incentive to buy the records. But that particular promotion worked. It was somebody at the record company that put the word Guess Who with a question mark. People did buy it. It became a number 3 hit on Billboard in the States. And it launched the band, and pretty soon they had to change their name to Guess Who in order to get the acclaim and the success. But at that time, Randy and Bert, his vocal partner, were looking to find other ways of earning revenue, and they decided they could do it by writing songs for other bands rather than just themselves. And you have to understand, it's the guy who writes the music that gets the big money when a record sells. It's not the band that plays it. And so if Randy could get Spice or the Mongrels or Tom, Dick, and Harry to record his music, the revenue went to him.
Oh, okay.
So that was his motivation. Randy was quite skilled. He did 2 songs. The first 2 songs that Sugar and Spice did were both written by Randy. And there was no proper recording studio in Winnipeg at that time. So we recorded those 2 songs in our practice space in the Hart building on 4th Street, just south of Portage Avenue. And I've been recording since I was 8 years old, and I had the equipment. So I was the recording engineer and did the multi-track recording of both of them.
Okay.
And Randy wrote it, and he produced it. So he said this a little louder, that a little softer, you know, more bass, less drums, that sort of thing was his role. And so over a period of we'd known each other for quite a while on a casual basis, but when we did those 2 records, we spent 4 or 5 days literally sitting in each other's chair. And so I got to know him pretty good. I still see him. We email, we do happy birthday, but he's very famous, very rich.
Yeah. So tell me about how you guys got involved with the teen dance parties.
Well, in order to do that, I'll back up a little bit if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I got involved with a fellow in my high school, Phil O'Connell, who was a guitar player, and he and some other fellows had just created a band which they called the Griffins, and it was a rhythm and blues band, and they were very good. And the other band I'd been working with at the time, Safe and Sound, were much younger, and they didn't have the stamina to go play gigs and so forth. So I got quite involved. I did the sound for them, and immediately determined that they needed a manager in order to do their affairs. Most musicians can't manage themselves out of a paper bag, and that's just the way it is. But they was a Crescent Wood band. Larry Mahler on bass, Phil O'Connell on guitar, Kenny Richard on drums, initially Ron Harder on rhythm guitar, and Don Carrier on vocals. And we did very well. This is in the period of time that Neil Young calls when Winnipeg was the Liverpool of Canada. We had 200 bands in this town. And I'll say now, because I'll refer to it later, at that time, the drinking age was 21 years old.
Okay.
And so we and the other 199 bands in the area all played 2 or 3 times on a weekend, because we played at church basements, high schools, community clubs, Legion halls, outdoors. We played anywhere and everywhere. And with the number of community clubs and high schools and church basements in Winnipeg, 200 bands were able to keep themselves busy.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, 5 guys in the band and me as the manager, on a typical night, we would earn $75, which isn't a lot of money. One of the things I knew as a manager, and I knew best, was I got 10% off the top. So I got $7.50 every night that we played. Then the expenses of doing it and paying for the equipment and so forth came off, and then the 5 band members shared the little bit that was left. But it was not a way to earn a living. Everybody did it because they loved it. We found ourselves competing with some very good other bands, and at a certain point, there was nothing, frankly, to distinguish us from the mongrels. We were playing the same kind of music. They'd play the community club one week, we'd be there the next, and then them again. People, we were interchangeable. And it got to be in your showmanship and your talent and the catalog of music played. It was really a dog eat dog. There were so many bands and so many places, and again, it was hard to get the attention of the crowd.
Yeah.
In that period of time, guys, Chad Allen and the Expressions, or the Reflections, or ultimately called the Guess Who, or the Devrons were a big band, or the Jury. These guys had some records, and they would get the attention of the kids going out to the gig before I did. Because the drinking age was 21, our audience was everybody up to 20 years old. And so
wow.
we had a large audience. In order to make a difference and do this seriously, we had a deep navel contemplating evening one night, and we decided who in the band is really in this, who's serious, or who's just doing this for a lark. And the lead singer and the keyboard player both agreed at that point that this was just fun. They were just trying to get new girlfriends and that sort of thing. The remaining 3, Ken Richard, Larry Mahler, and Phil O'Connell, said, no, we're in this. We want to do this for the long term. And I, as the manager, said, we've got to do something to distinguish ourselves from other product. We've got to look different or sound different. And that evening, we happened to be in a friend's house, and we were listening to albums on somebody's mum was away, and so we were playing very loud on their home stereo, playing The Doors, which was a different style of music to what we were playing. And we put on an album called Brazil '66, Sergio Mendes, and they had two girls in the thing. And we realized at that point, I said, you realize that everything that's number one on the radio is Motown, and it's all girl singers. And if we could get a girl in the band, we could do this material. I think at that time, the band Gettysburg Address, another local band, Mike Hanford, keyboard player and vocalist, sang My Girl, which was a Motown hit. But it just didn't work. He didn't have the harmonies and things in the background. So Kenny Richard, our drummer, said to us, my friend John, who plays in the Mongrels, has a girlfriend and she sings. And she's got two sisters who sing.
Oh.
And so I said, well, let's find out if they'd be interested. And so we went and auditioned them, and they just blew us away at how good they were. Put it in context, I had just turned 18. We were very young. We were all in high school. And the girls went to Balmoral Hall, Catholic girls. Their ages were 14, 16, and 17.
Wow.
Very young. Eileen, the youngest, 14 years old. She was a tall girl and wouldn't know that she was only 14. But, the three of them could really, really sing well. So they agreed to do this. So we in order to not have hard feelings, I went back to our band with our keyboard player and our vocalist and said, this isn't working. We think we're just going to break up. And they said, oh, okay, we're going to go to the lake for the summer then. And at that point, the three remaining band members, the bass, guitar, and drummer, and the Murphy girls went into ultimate secret rehearsal. And we needed to replace the keyboard player. So we got Kathy Murphy's boyfriend, the original guy, John, the guitar player from the Mongrels, and we asked him to join us. And we'd lost our male singer, so we had to have a male singer. So we got Jeff Marin. So we took the Jeff Marin and John McInnes from the Mongrels. We stole two of their people. So we had 5 guys and 3 girls. And this was in the summer of '67. We just did this on a strict secrecy basis. I went out and I sought the assistance of my friend Randy Bachman, who wrote music. The radio station guys, I got Doc Steen involved. I got Bob Burns from Teen Dance Party. I got Frank Weiner, our agent. And what we schemed, or what I schemed and convinced everybody we should do, is that we should get a really good tune. We should record it. We should get it on the radio with Doc Steen's help at CKRC. And it should be on the air and getting record sales and be something that, it was sort of like the Guess Who. Where are they from? Oh, they're from somewhere else. They're not from Winnipeg. We didn't want anyone to know we were actually from Winnipeg at the time. There's an old phrase my dad taught me one time, and he says, no man is a missionary in his own country. Or, if you want expertise, you get it from somewhere else, locally. It was just an attitude, particularly in the prairies. So we didn't say where we were from. We just let people assume that we were from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Choreography, so they could dance and sing. We went down to the stag shop and bought all the guys suits and beetle boots, and we.
Oh man. It looks like I'm freezing again. All right. Sorry, guys. Choice of live broadcasting. I'm just gonna try to refresh here for a moment. Okay, let's try this again. I apologize.
No problem. Long story short, we did everything necessary to make the band act professional. We rehearsed and we got complete. We could do 3 full sets of music, and Doc Steen put our record on the radio, and it went within 2 or 3 weeks. It went into the Canadian top 10.
Wow!
Getting lots of airplay in Winnipeg. Doc Steen talking up this new band. We got a lot of traffic. At that point, we decided we were ready to go, and so we got Frank Weiner to book us at a very large gig. We would typically play at Crescentwood Community Club or Heights Community Club, or Fort Garry United Church, and have 50 or 75 people. He booked us on the basis of being from somewhere else and having a hit on the radio. He booked us into the University of Manitoba Winter Carnival, which was on the 27th of February 1968. It was a Saturday. We had 4,000 people.
Oh, wow.
We sold the place out. But our formal presentation was earlier that day when we went down and the band lip synced our hit, Not to Return, on Teen Dance Party. And I believe you had some pictures of that. The band that didn't perform, they were lip syncing, and all the guys were standing on little stools and kind of doing this, and the girls in front. But that was the launch of the band. And,
okay.
And we never looked back from that moment. I mentioned we used to be earning $75 a night. Well, that one set, University of Manitoba paid us $800.
Wow. And that's pretty unheard of for that time, right?
Yeah. Basically, we catapulted ourselves into being considered one of the city's best bands, and everybody wanted to book us. And we got way more money from the same people that wouldn't pay us more than $75, 2 months or 6 months earlier. Now they're paying us the big bucks, so we felt pretty good about that. And the thing is that because the drinking age was still 21 at that point, everybody through junior high school, and the first couple of years of university came to see us, because if you're 21 or older, you're in a bar. You're not listening. You're looking more for girls than music, and you're spending all your time in a bar. And so we did extremely well. Within about 2 weeks, we opened for The Who in Edmonton at the Edmonton Coliseum.
Okay.
About 2 weeks beyond that, we opened at the Winnipeg Auditorium for Sonny and Cher. So we just launched into the real deal, and the band began to tour. And here's the thing: is that all of us were still going to school. As I said, on that day of that TV show, January 27th, 68, I was 18 years old, and I was in grade 12. And others, Kathy Murphy was about the same age, Larry was older, Phil was older, but we were all in that same general range. And so as I had to explain it to people, we were going to school, we had jobs, or we were making babies and families. But we could rehearse every night, and then we would play Friday and Saturday and sometimes Sunday. And if the tour got right, we would get time off, or we would skip school and we would go and we would tour for 7 days through Saskatchewan or Ontario or something. At that point, we were earning more money than our parents while we went to high school. And it was kind of a la-la land. We were having a very good time. I'll skip forward a little bit. I think it was in the summer of 1970, which was 2 years later, they changed the drinking age from 21 to 18.
Oh, wow.
All of our audience that we were entertaining up to that point over the age of 18 went into the bars. And community clubs and church basements and high schools couldn't function because all of their audience was going into bars. And they would come to us, so the manager of some major bar hotel in Winnipeg would come and say, "You guys are one of the best bands. We'd like very much for you to come and perform at our bar. So what's the deal?" And they'd say, "Well, you're going to play 6 nights a week, from 9 at night till 2 in the morning, and we're going to pay you for that 6-day period you currently earn in one night." And we all said no. Weren't going to do it. Maureen Murphy, the lead singer, said she wasn't going to go into a bar and play and have people yelling and throwing things and getting drunk. Everything we'd done up to that point was tour dates. And to tell you a secret, I don't tell many people this, I guess I am now. I personally have never seen a Winnipeg band play in a Winnipeg bar. Ever. I'm not interested. Bars have no interest to me, and the bands that are playing there are usually not very good. And there are exceptions. In 2004, I went into the Zoo on Osborne Street for my son's band's Projector, and Nemo performed there. And I went in there just to supervise because they were a young band and I wanted to oversee it. But Maureen Murphy left the band. She was the lead singer. Our hit "Cruel War" from 1969 could have made millions of dollars, but the dynamics changed and the band broke up.
Yeah.
We started with 8 people. We ended up with 5, and there were about 25 people in between.
Wow.
The band just rotated. Kathy Murphy, the oldest, and her boyfriend, the rhythm player, left the band first. Then Maureen left the band. Eileen, the youngest, stayed with it quite a while. Larry Mahler and Ken Richard left the band and were replaced by people from other bigger bands that were, I won't say better, but were better on the road. We were all still pretty young at that point. And then at a certain point, the band had effectively changed completely. The only person who was banned from the very beginning to the very end was Phil O'Connell, the guitar player.
Okay.
So the band went from about 65 till about 63. And all told, 18 records cut, lots of sales, lots of touring across the country. But it just came to a natural end. And at one point, there were no females, and so the band changed its name from Sugar and Spice to just Spice. And the last several records were under the name Spice. But it was the same band. Literally, it goes from 1965, when the Griffins started, till when Sugar and Spice ended in 73. And again, nobody really knows this, but all of our music was on 45s. Our big hit went on to 3 albums, went on to, I showed you before we went on the air here. This is the K-Tel Records Volume 2. That's got our band doing Cruel War on it. It also went on a Manitoba collection of musicians. And it was on an album put out on the Turtles label, White Whale Records, out of the States. So Cruel War was on the first 2 albums, and Not to Return, our very first record, with strings added, was on the American release. Cruel War sold as many records in Canada as did Shaken All Over, which blew my mind. It was a huge hit when I was a kid, and we achieved that. Whale Records wanted to put Cruel War onto the American radio stations, and I won't get into how radio works, but there's a thing company called Drake International who manage the playlists of all the top 40 radio stations in the United States. They liked Cruel War, and they put it on the White Whale 45 label, and they distributed it to 400 top 40 stations in the United States. And they let us know that, and the following, it was going to go on the air, on the playlists of 400 US stations on the following Monday. And at that point, White Whale Records ended up phoning us back and saying, Peter Yarrow from Peter, Paul and Mary has called. And I don't know if you're there, Cruel War, is labeled as public domain.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
You see that?
Yeah.
Public domain. And this was the disc that was, it's not for sale. It was being distributed to the radio stations because Drake Radio loved it and they thought it was going to be a top 40 hit. And White Whale Records said to Peter Yarrow, well, we just put on the information that was given to us by the band's producer. Why don't you call him? And so Peter Yarrow, Peter, Paul, Mary, phoned Winnipeg to look for Bob Burns, who produced the record. And he said that it should say Yarrow and Stookie on there instead of public domain, because if you put it out this way, I don't get any money for the record that's being sold and distributed. And for Bob's dead now, so we can't ask him the question, but Bob told Peter Yarrow that he did not write the song and he was not going to change it. So Peter Yarrow called White Whale Records back and said, if you distribute that, I will sue you. They didn't. They pulled it. It didn't get played. I have radio friends who tell me that even today, if we could get it on the radio, it would sell. It would earn millions and millions of dollars. So that was a huge. That crushed the band pretty badly. That was in 1969. The little story I've told you about Peter Yarrow calling Bob Burns and Bob Burns blowing him off, we didn't learn until about 2 years ago. Bob never told us that. He just said. They just did. And so that discourages, and it was shortly after that Maureen left the band. But other than those 3 albums that those 2 individual tracks were on, our music was we never made an album, Sugar and Spice album. And this was in 1968 through 73. The internet didn't exist, digital didn't exist, CDs didn't exist. iTunes didn't exist. 45s went out of favor pretty quick, and up till today, there are there's one exception. Our Franklin label put out a collection, and so most of our tunes are on a disc called the Top Tunes of Franklin Records, and it was distributed at a 2009 rock reunion at the convention center. They sold 1,000 copies. With that exception, music is not on the internet. So what we're doing right now, we started to make it for the 50th anniversary, which is 3 years ago, but life gets in the way. Now COVID's been in the way. But this spring we are releasing an anthology album called Salad Days, Sugar and Spice, and it'll have 18 tracks on it. And that'll be available on iTunes and Spotify and all those other things. The reason we did this, our guitar player Phil has grandkids. He was in other bands as well. He was in Magic and Steel. And they did an album for RCA Records in 1982 for Magic. And that was too early for the internet and everything else. So it's not on iTunes either. His grandkids don't believe he was ever a rock star because they can't find his music on iTunes. So about a year and a half or 2 years ago, I found it. I got some master tapes. We remastered it and we released it. Now it's on iTunes and Spotify and all that other stuff. And so now he's a hero with his grandkids because he really was a rock star. We're going to do the same thing basically with Sugar and Spice.
Well, I've noticed that the music of Sugar and Spice is on YouTube, and so every now and then I'll see you posting the link to to a song, or Deb will post a link to their song, and it just, I grew up listening to music from the 60s and 70s because my mom, and she would tell me, like, she would tell me all these bands that she hung out with as a kid, as growing up, and just knowing that, you know, my mom had ties with several of our local bands. It just blows my mind, and the fact that, you know, Larry. Later on, meeting Larry through my cosplay, and he was a fantastic photographer. And meeting you, just this all just blows my mind still. And knowing that you guys had your foot in the door with you know, all these fantastic people, and I love hearing these stories. And how is it like when you first met Larry and you saw his photography, did you try to encourage his photography?
To my knowledge, Larry was never involved in photography while he was in the band.
Oh, okay.
I caught up to Larry perhaps in the year before he passed, and I learned about his photography at that time. In fact, I probably had contacted him when I was trying to collect old photos of the bands, and he had some and sent them to me, and I had some which I forwarded to him. And I was just reviewing some notes back and forth back at the time he died. I'd been talking to him, and we had a date to get together for coffee, which we never made. So it was very sad that we lost him at that time.
Yeah.
Larry was a lovable guy. He was a teddy bear of a guy. And he was instrumental to the Griffins and Sugar and Spice. And then he went on to manage some bands and play in some other bands. But it was when I had sort of diverted away from the music, and I was working on technology and recording and so forth. So he and I really, there was a big hole in our lives where we didn't get together. But I think I visited with him twice, maybe talked to him about a half a dozen times.
Okay.
But yeah, his photography was very good, very good.
He was known for having quite the mustache throughout his whole life. I'll bring up the
picture, which I think you've got. The picture I think is going to be of our television performance. Well, okay, that's actually Phil and Maureen.
Oh, okay.
The fellow on the left is just a fan. There we go. That is waiting to go on to open for the Who.
Okay.
That's Larry on the left with Phil and Maureen. And if you look carefully, he's got what looks like he's been using his mom's mascara on his upper lip. If you go to the picture of the band performing at the television station, that's Larry second from the left, right in the center of the picture.
Okay.
We didn't know it. Nobody planned it. When he walked in that day, he had a great big black fake mustache pasted on his face. And that's what's in the picture.
Okay. He ended up having that mustache for years, though. Like, I don't remember a day where he didn't have a mustache.
Well, one of the pictures I sent you is the Griffins, and you'll see him without any facial hair. The five guys. There you go. That's Larry, second from the right.
Okay.
Again, he might have had baby down on his upper lip, but not a heavy mustache. Just to introduce those guys, that's what.
Sorry. I'll go back.
The fellow on the left is Ken Richard, the drummer. Phil O'Connell, the guitar player. Don Carrier, the lead vocalist. Larry Mahler, bass player. And this was the second rhythm. We started to throw on. I just blanked on his name. Ron played guitar, but his dad was in the Air Force, and he ended up moving away. And Ken Lowry played organ, and he joined us at that point. But with the exception of the four on the left are the first four in the band. And so if you take out the middle guy and the right-hand guy, that's the foundation of Sugar and Spice.
Okay.
And that was before Phil's nose job.
Around that time, also, like Joey Gregorish was just starting on the scene as well. Did you guys end up working with him at all?
I'm sorry, I just heard the name Joey Gregorish.
Around that time, Joey Gregorish had kind of started to explode on the scene as well. Did you guys work with him as well?
At that point, he hadn't quite yet. Joey was the drummer for the Mongrels.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, their lead singer was Jeff Marin. Jeff tended to go to band practice and go to gigs and so forth, but didn't do homework and was getting in trouble at school. And one day the Mongrels went into, I don't know which, for sake of argument, Crescentwood Community Club and sat down to play. And just as they were about to start, Jeff Marin's mother walked in, grabbed him by the ear and dragged him out. And he was grounded. He couldn't play in the band anymore because he was screwing around with his homework. So they said, "Oh, what'll we do?" So they swung a mic boom around and put it in front of Joey, the drummer, and he sang that night. And they thought he sings well enough. They made him the lead singer, and they got another drummer.
Huh.
And so Jeff, the guy who got dragged away, is the vocalist we hired for Sugar and Spice.
You just wanted the bad boy, right?
Oh yeah, no. Every time you see him, he dressed like a Beau Brummel. You know, he was in jackets and slacks, like it was as if he worked at Tip Top Tailors, which he didn't. But he was always dressed to the nines and acted like a real gentleman, and he could really sing. And he's passed now, unfortunately. Many of the people in the band at this stage. Yeah. But so Joey started, as I say, as the and ended up being the singer in the Mongrels. The Mongrels then had an upset where Alan Schick came in and became the lead singer, and Joey wasn't working. And one of my other bands at that point was doing a tour across Western Canada with oh man, can't think of the name of the band. Gimme Gimme Good Lovin' was the band. We were doing a tour with them across Western Canada, and our drummer at that time had booked the summer off and was away with his parents. So Joey came to be the drummer for us for that summer.
Oh, wow.
All these things are interwound. We all knew Bob Burns. He was doing Teen Dance Party. He produced records. He was involved in promotion. He managed the Guess Who at one point. He's the guy who took them on the tour to England that left them practically impoverished and trapped because they couldn't afford to leave. But he was doing Teen Dance Party, and he got so busy doing other things that he decided that he should find a replacement. So he hired first a guy named Garth Chalmers, who was the first person who took over Teen Dance Party, and he didn't turn out. So then Bob hired Joey, and Joey began to be the host of the music shows on television. And at that point, he began to develop a solo career. He sang the Wedding Song, which is his big claim to fame, and did a bunch. Joey was another one of his songs. That song's written about his daughter who died. And Joey's a good friend. We see him fairly often. And I saw him just recently. He did an anniversary. It was probably a 50th-ish anniversary of the Mongrels out at the casino on Regent.
Yeah. He loves performing at the casino. I saw him live for one of his birthday celebrations a couple of years ago. And he still is amazing. Like, I remember watching him on Skittlebits when I was a kid, and just like just seeing him perform live was just a great experience for me.
This particular thing was billed as a Mongrels reunion or a flashback to the Mongrels. And he had called me, and we had front row seats. We were part of the batty at the front. And we're sitting there, and a big screen drops down in front of the stage. And suddenly up it comes, and it's playing some of the record pictures of all of the various mongrels in the band. And I hadn't been paying attention. I'm sitting there, I sing to my wife, you know, all those guys are dead. And she says, that's what he said at the beginning. This is in memoriam because Joey's the only surviving mongrel.
Oh, wow.
So the screen went up, and there's Joey with some good Winnipeg session musicians who played back. And he did a whole bunch of the mongrel stuff. And so that was really cool. And I get together with the lead singer of our Love Circle band, is Jackie Dahl is her married name. She and Joey were very, very good friends. And so she works for CBC in Alberta, and she comes into town, and Joey and I sometimes get together. And so there are fewer of us from those days, honestly, but we maintain contact.
Oh, good.
Yeah, Joey's a prince of a guy.
Super nice.
I'll tell you one little story which nobody knows.
Absolutely.
This is how good a guy Joey is. A guy who used to be one of our roadies in Sugar and Spice was a lifelong friend of mine, and this is going back maybe 5 years. He got really, really ill and was dying, and he was in St. Boniface Hospital. The Jerry, the band, Ferry Across the Mercy, Jerry and the Pacemakers, were in town, and they were at the casino out on McPhillips, and Joey was hosting at that time. And I found out my Ken had this heart attack and was in the hospital and couldn't use his tickets and couldn't see Jerry Morrison and Jerry and the Pacemakers, which he had just been wetting his pants to do. And how it all worked out. But said a very big fan of yours who wanted to see you is in a cardiac ward at one of our big hospitals and couldn't make it. He's very upset he couldn't see you. Jerry Morrison said, I'll go say hello to him. Visit the hospital. And as it turned out, the tour plane left and they couldn't. So Jerry Morrison wrote out a really nice letter and he gave it to Joey, and Joey hand delivered it to my friend in the hospital. And Jerry Morrison's letter said, Ken, I understand what you're going through. I've had heart issues, and I wish you the best recovery and so forth. But Joey went way out of his way to deliver from Jerry Morrison to my dying friend. I mean, that's the kind of guy Joey is.
Wow.
He didn't have to do that.
Yeah. Oh, I remember going through broadcasting school and having to do, one of the things that we had to do was interview someone in the broadcasting industry. And so I ended up contacting Tom Milroy and Joey Gregory. They both wanted to be interviewed, and I'm just like, what do I do? I guess hand in both. But having that chance to interview Joey Gregory was just like mind blowing. Like I honestly didn't think he was going to say yeah.
Joey has more stories than I do.
Okay, I'll have to email him, see if he'd be interested in hopping on my show.
I don't. Why not? And if you have trouble, I'll convince him.
Will do. But yeah, no, you being here is just fantastic. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule and telling us these stories. So I know you still keep in contact with a lot of these people. Do you ever jam with them still? Like, do you pick up your instruments and play still?
Well, as I say, I was embarrassed to hold my guitar in front of these people because they knew what they were doing and I was playing at it. But just of late, as I mentioned, I got my new bass to go with my 1965 amplifier and picked it up, and God, I can still remember how to play Animals tunes. Nobody knows who I'm talking about, but I put out a call, and the bass players for several bands have said that they, particularly during COVID when nobody's working, they'll work with me and they'll teach me how to play my bass properly. And so I'm very much looking forward to that.
Okay.
Yeah, and when I haven't bought or sold a guitar in many years, so I went to get Phil O'Connell, our old guitar player from Sugar and Spice, and he went out shopping with me and picked it out for me. And so yeah, it's pretty cool. The big problem is that, as I said, I was 18 the day that we did that television show, and I'm 72 in about 2 weeks. A lot of years gone by, a lot of water under the bridge. And, so we've lost friends. Fortunately, in my situation, we're healthy, we're at home, and I have lots of energy and interest. And so, as I say, I'm doing things with re-recording, learning to play my bass again. I don't think that I'll even attempt to embarrass myself by going out and playing with somebody else at this stage. I'll just do it in my head. I am a rock star in here.
So I know that you were posting something about being a pilot. How is that? Like, do you go flying? Do you have a personal plane that you fly in, or? Yes,
I retired in 1994. I was 45 years old. My brother had been a Canadian aerobatic pilot champion.
Oh, wow.
I'd been to air shows and seen him perform. It goes back to when I was a kid. My dad was trained to fly Spitfires off of aircraft carriers in World War II for the Royal Navy. And the day he was supposed to fly his first mission, the war ended and he never did it. So he was a frustrated pilot for all of his life, and my family used to hang around airports all the time. And at some point, my dad said to me, I'm the oldest of 6, he said to me and my siblings, if you ever want to get a pilot's license, I'll pay for half.
Okay.
And the next younger brother that I have, took him up on that. He got his pilot's license at 16 years old. I went and saw my brother win championships and do things, but I didn't take him up on that until the day that I saw him win the Canadian Aerobatic Championship at St. Andrews Airport. The Canadian National Championship was held there. And so I sat across, we went to Ray and Jerry's, all the competitors and the judges and the pilots, and sat along the big long wall at Ray and Jerry's having Heineken and steak. And I got some guy across the table from me who turns out to be an air traffic controller. He was also a participant in this competition, although he didn't win anything. And in the process of having many Heinekens with him, I learned he was a pilot instructor. So I leaned across the table and I said, "Oh, Dave, if I ever going to get an airplane, you'd have to teach me to fly." And he said, "That's a deal." We did this. I retired 2 or 3 years later. I went out and bought an airplane, which I couldn't fly. And I phoned him up and said, "Okay, you have to come teach me how to fly it now." I did it in that sequence because I knew if I had the airplane, I would actually go and do it. If I just started taking lessons, I'd get bored and fade away. So I ended up flying with my brother. We formed a Canadian flight team. We flew air shows across the country. The thing we enjoyed doing most was taking young people for their first airplane ride. We do it one-on-one. I'd have one kid in the seat between the age of 7 and 17. And I flew about 200 or 300 kids that way on Saturday mornings and Sunday afternoons. And these kids would get very excited about it, and they'd call me and they'd say, "Mr. Gillespie, I really like that. I want to be a pilot. My grandparents are going to mortgage the farm and pay for my education. Where should I go?" And I said, "Well, I didn't like any of the options around here at the time that I was looking. I got a private instructor." And then it kind of went ding. I said, we own 4 airplanes in our flight team. We don't use them in the winter. So I opened a flight school at Winnipeg International Airport in 1999. And 1,300 kids flew with us. I'm proud of that. We didn't hurt anybody. No animals were harmed in the making of that film. But I had a stroke in 2004 and almost killed me. Took 6 years to recover. And when I couldn't operate or fly or even drive or even think or speak properly, I had a very negative outcome. I was depressed. It was a terrible 6-year recovery. But I decided I wasn't going to die. Nobody was going to tell me when I was going to die. And so I just carried on. I came out the other end and I ended up taking Transport Canada to court. In 2010, I became the first pilot in Canada to be able to get my pilot's license back after a stroke.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't my own flight school airplanes at that point, but I went out and bought an airplane that year, and then I bought another one and another one. And in fact, I just sold my lovely, lovely airplane a couple of months ago because under COVID, there's no place to go.
Yeah.
You couldn't fly outside the province. You certainly couldn't fly in the States, and I sure as hell wouldn't want to. So I've been. It turns out, that's the year I started learning to fly. The year I retired, and somebody sent me a pin the other day. I've been flying for 27 years.
Wow.
Smacks me, but we've been everywhere. I don't like to go and fly around the pasture. I like to go places. So my wife and we would fly from here to Kansas City to have steak dinner at the Golden Ox restaurant for our anniversary. Or we would fly to Florida to go to the beach, or we would go to Toronto to visit our son, or that's the kind of thing I do. And under COVID, I don't see it happening now, and I don't see it happening for quite some time. So unfortunately, I've put my pilot's license in my back pocket and I've sold my airplane.
Oh, okay.
It's like ripping my heart out.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll live long and prosper and be able to go flying again in the future. There's some lovely airplanes parked. Nobody else is flying them. I can go and rent them pretty cheap and fly anywhere I want. And so that's my option. That was my rush.
Yeah.
But and as it happens, I've been asked to recreate some of the products that I designed and manufactured and sold into recording studios and broadcast stations.
Oh, wow.
Which hand is there? That thing behind, right over.
Yeah.
I can't see my own. Right there. That's one of my studio monitors. Those came. I bought the Nashville studio closed because they sold it out to be a horse paddock. And they bought those. I sold about 2,500 pairs of those back in the 80s. And these guys were going to close down the studio. They had 4 pairs. They had 4 rooms. And I called him and I said, "What are you doing with them?" He said, "Well, I'm taking them to Telluride, Colorado. I'm going to use them. I'm going to have 1 pair. I got 1 pair that I don't need." And I said, "Well, I'll take them off your hands." And so I climbed in my airplane and flew down to Nashville, loaded them in. Those particular speakers, that one sitting right there, is the studio monitors on which every record they ever made by Taylor Swift and Neil Diamond and Martina McBride and a bunch of names I can't remember were all done on that particular speaker. And
oh, wow.
We haven't made them or sold them since 1986. And I'm getting a lot of people calling me. Tom Petty, before he died, was looking for a pair. He used them in California. There's a number of people out there. So we think that there's a market for about 250 more pair of those. And so I'm looking at re-engineering those and maybe building a short run of those. So those are the sorts of things that are keeping me busy.
Okay, excellent.
That's the kind of stuff I was doing that when I stepped away from being a band manager, is I worked with Barbara Streisand has a pair of those in her house, and John Mellencamp and Billy Joel, and those are the people I was working with. But I wasn't a band manager. I was working with studio equipment, working with big ass heart you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, you're getting a call.
Give me 1 second. My music just started. It's on a timer. It starts at 7 o'clock, so there we go.
Oh, is it reminding you to do something?
No, it's just we have music. I have 7 music zones in our house, and depending on the time of day, we play spa music in the bathroom. We play CBC News in the kitchen in the morning. We play jazz in the living room in the evening. It just all, you know, there's always music in the house. I don't think about it. It just comes on like that.
That's awesome. But I know you gotta go eat and do your thing. So I will end this conversation. But I definitely want you back on my show.
Well, thank you for thinking of me. And
no problem.
Yeah, I will. Now that I know about this, I'll figure out how to tune in and catch it with some other people.
Absolutely.
I might even be able to find some, you know, rock stars for you to talk.
That would be awesome. If you want to bring them on, and while you guys chat, by all means.
They might not. They might be the real deal, not in their head.
I appreciate you doing that. Thank you very much, Michael, for joining me tonight. I appreciate this, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you, Willow. I did send you a link. If you pass it on to your audience, they can see all the official history of Sugar and Spice and hear the music there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely post up the website and everything. Mark wants you on his show, which is another local interview show. Here he does it live on his show, and then he's also on Shaw.
Okay.
So
pass on my email or whatever, and
absolutely.
Okay.
You have a great night.
Yeah, you too. Good night. It's been fun.